How cool is it that we talk to an expert in helping companies learn about how to launch and succeed in new countries while she's abroad?
Maybe someday you'll be as cool as Dr. Chui Chui Tan, the director and founder of Beyō Global and the author of the new book, Research for Global Growth.
This was great. Chui Chui is the person to work with in this space. So let's get straight into it.
Hi, Chui Chui. Really nice to meet you. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And today we're going to be talking about your journey as a culturalization strategist and how to succeed in international markets. But before we get started on that, give us a quick kind of lowdown of how you got into international strategy.
Cool. So yeah, for the last 16 years, I have been helping businesses, for example, Spotify, the Washington Post, Fiverr, Marriott International, in simplifying the complex cultural landscape into actionable strategies that help them to drive success in different countries and globally. And it can be to help them when they're about to launch in a new market or to take the same market they're in and into the next level. And I also advise C-level and senior management on how to uncover global growth opportunities by understanding the underlying cultural nuances and unconscious beliefs and values a market and its people hold. So the strategies I'm advising could be on products, but also could be on other aspects of their businesses. So for example, pricing, on their propositions and their branding, positioning, and so on. Because like to make it like successful in different markets, it has to have aligned views and efforts and contributions from different teams within a business as well.
How did you get into this as a career path? Were you always interested in this topic, or did you end up in this area like product
By
people?
chance.
We always kind of like fall into our role.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. So my background is actually user experience, and so I've been doing that for a while. Although before I start working for myself, I was being offered a product role in a company, but I decided to turn it down to start my own business, which is what I'm doing now. So how did I fall into this? So when I was doing user experience, Marriott International actually was one of the few companies at that time that was like 15 years ago that actually realized that they have to start understanding their customers and users in different markets, how they go about booking holidays, and what are the things important to them when they get into the hotels. And like, for example, connecting rooms are very important for Middle Eastern and guests, and things are important for different culture and everything. So I became their international consultant, external consultant for their global strategy. So that is how I kind of get into it. And I started to write a ebook, I think 10 or 11 years ago on international user research to start off. And when I talk to in conferences and run workshops and always in this topic. So I start to kind of get into that role. And then when I start working for myself, and I kind of focus even more on this area, like looking into not just about understanding users in different markets, like what they do and why they do what they do and the things they need, but also looking into the underlying beliefs and culture and the values and why what actually triggering those behaviors and the values. It could be the historical of the countries, or it could be the economy set up, or it could be the infrastructure that they have because their internet is super fast that actually have influence into how they behave and so on. So it's kind of like looking the underlying unconscious beliefs that people don't normally just tell you when you talk to local people. So that become more strategic in that instance that I'm advising businesses.
As you kind of said, there's so much to learn and there's so much to understand
Mm.
when you're about to launch in a new country, or when you're, investigating whether you should launch in a new country or launch a new product. So where do you start? Like when a customer comes to you, when one of your customers comes to you and says, right,
Mm.
we've got this plan, this idea, we want to find out what the risks are, where the opportunities are. How do you start with that?
So normally the question I will ask them is to understand where they're at, right? So because our businesses could be in different stages. So like I said, mentioned at the very beginning, like they could be doing quite well in their home market and they want to launch in the next market or a new market. Like the questions will be which actually market I should go into, because normally people will say, oh, go for the language, right? Like, oh, make it
Mm.
maybe they're English speaking, let's go there. Or they might say, maybe we go for Spanish speaking, because once we translate into Spanish, then we cover Latin America and we cover Spain and so on. So yeah, a lot of market. So, but then actually those kind of decisions is actually not too wise, because there are a lot of other things to consider as well. So they could be kind of trying to understand where they want to launch and what they should do in that new market as well. Or let's say they're already in the market and they say it's not doing very well and we want to do better, but where do we even start? Or they could be doing very well, they want to go on the next market. So it's kind of like first step is to understand where they are in the stages they are in their business and what they want to achieve. And then the secondly is always to understand what they know already or what they don't know, or the assumptions they have, the hypotheses they have about the market. In this instance, then I have some workshops or framework that I would use to help them to identify what are the things that they think is true, is indeed the facts. What are the things that actually is just the assumptions and the personal views about a market and stereotypes and things like that. And then kind of go through that process with them to identify what are the missing informations that they might need to find out. It doesn't always have to be research, but sometimes it could be the data that they already have that I kind of help them to kind of dig that out and see from different angle how you analyze that and to find out. So yeah, there's no specific framework as such, because it's depending on where you are.
Yeah, no, just reading about one of your workshops, and I'd love to talk to you more about it later because I think it's a really practical and wonderful thing. But one thing I want to touch on really quickly before that, words are really important and they mean different things to different people. And you're very careful with some of the words you use. But you say you're a culturalization strategist. Most of the time that I've worked in this space or talked to other people, we talk about localization of the
Mm.
product to market. What's the difference? Why is it important to not use the L word?
That's the L word. And so when I started, and I talked to a lot of businesses and senior stakeholders and C-level and everything, and then they always say, "Oh, how can you help us?" And a very common question I ask them is like, "What do you already done? What have you already done or planning to do already?" Because I need to understand the effort they already put in, so I don't want to kind of duplicate or actually do something that against what they already done. So a lot of times it's like, yeah, we've done quite a lot already, and we localized quite a lot of things already. And then when you kind of prompt into it a bit more, it's actually turned out they just translate the language and they just do the basic currency change, like language change, currency change, and date format changing, and so on. And that is not enough, because that is kind of misperception people always have, like localization means translating the language. For me, localization is more very short terms and it's more about finding a way to communicate with the audience. It's mostly one-off effort. So you translate, you change the currency and so on. Whereas culturalizations is a bit slightly more in the deeper connections. So it's kind of about understanding the culture and having a deeper connections with the people that you are serving in different markets as well. So, and it has to be a continuous learning and continuous effort to keep improving the products, because the experience is huge, right? It can be just add one features, change the design of this website, and that is that. So that's why I always tend to avoid using the localization, because then they will think, oh, it's just doing that. I have to say though, like culturalizations, you can't find it on Oxford or Cambridge dictionary. It doesn't exist. But it's very self-explanatory, because as I mentioned to you for the first time, that it you know what that is on the high level sense as well. So yeah, I tend to use that.
As an American who lives in the UK, I fully understand that you can see something and it's technically right, but also 100% wrong. But how do we get that across to other people? How much of a difference have you seen this actually make?
So yeah, I actually spoke in a conference about this topic just a few weeks ago in UX Insight actually, and I kind of mentioned that, and it's so like for me it feels like really obvious, but I was so many people kind of write to me and also come to me, and you can see their faces like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. So it's actually it's quite, a lot of people kind of start thinking in the different ways when they think about how they design or serve just design their product and serve their customers in different countries in a different ways, because there are so many levels in terms of how culturalizations, because like I say, like localization is very, very technical, like do this because this is what they're familiar with, and show them a website that they kind of used to. But culturalization is another level. So in my book as well, like a new book called Research for Global Growth, I mentioned about three levels of culturalizations, a framework that I created. So there are three levels. The first level was about creating a respect to the local. So this is about not doing anything that might offend their local laws or legals or their customs. And this is very, very basic that for example, you move to a new neighborhood, for example, and you want to kind of show your respect that you know the culture, how people actually in the neighborhood behave and so on. So you kind of being able to get that connections. So that is what the first level is to not make mistakes that might offend the local. So for example, I mentioned about geopolitical mistakes that a lot of companies, big brands, McDonald's, Marriott is in themselves as well, make some mistake about mentioning in their survey or on their website or in their ads about Tibet or Macau or Taiwan and Hong Kong being a separate country. So that's kind of like a backlash, or like they have to apologize to the government, Chinese government and people. So that is kind of the basic things that you don't want to offend anyone. And then the second level is more about the localization. We talk about like currency, naming, conventions, date, address. How do you kind of make sure that you capture the right thing? So it's a kind of the basic that will provide a better experience for a local experience for the locals. And then the third level is the deeper sense, like the enhancement of the experience. It's not just the basic, but if you want to stand out in the market, then you have to make sure that you actually provide something that is more relevant and more adapt to the local culture and local needs within their ecosystem and within their environment, because that is the one is going to make your products more relevant to them.
And when I hear you say that, it slightly terrifies me.
In what way?
As a person who kind of manages a one kind of main product, and I have quite a small team, the thought of, the thought of localization it's that quite a big task, but
Mm,
then considering, and there's lots of tools for localization, aren't there? And there's lots of kind of ways in which you can make that easier or like quicker and from an operational point of view. But for the kind of experience enhancements and tailoring your experiences, my head is just kind of slightly exploding. So is this something that you would normally just do with much bigger organizations that can afford to have teams of people looking into this and like experimenting with it and designing those new experiences for those new markets?
mm.
Or is it something that you would expect a smaller business to be able to do maybe on a more
Smaller
accessible
scales.
scale?
Yeah. No, it completely. I work with small companies as well, or startups, not startup, more mature startups where they actually already move into the new market. So it's complete, because the thing about, so the first two layers, like as you say, is more manageable. Would you agree with that? Yeah. So you were saying that the first two layers, they have some tools and you actually can do desk research and ask local network about anything. So that is easier. The third layers is the one that there's no ending to it, because there are way to kind of enhance the experience on. So you don't actually have to say, I want to go full on and providing the best experience. It's just based on as much as you can do as a step and small step at each time, because every single step you do, it will help you to move your business and your product toward the local users closely, one step closer to them. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming and as such. So for example, if we think about a subscriptions models, like for example, like to basically understand a bit more about how people in different countries. So for example, if you want to, if you have a standard subscription model, monthly subscriptions, for example, and if you say, okay, in one of the markets are actually seeing quite low in subscriptions, the subs are quite low, and what actually you need to do about that. So you could actually have a data point that you can look into in your internal the internal data and what you can see, but also sometimes kind of understanding. You can talk to a few users in locally, understand where the insights that you have. So for example, subscriptions could be, you understand the markets, actually they don't pay in monthly payment because their salary, sometimes they are being paid weekly or bi-weekly and so on. So in that instance, they paying for a whole month could be a struggle because there's a whole lump sum at the beginning, and then they kind of can't pay for the rest of the month as well. In that instance, you might say, okay, how do we actually can test small? Can we actually have a different plans where actually allow people to pay for smaller chunks, like per week or per month, per week or even per day, that allows them to be able to kind of pay as they be able to do, or even pay as you go format, like prepaid, like they can pay when they want to use. So there are small things that you can actually think about how you can kind of capture their capture them in a smaller way
Yeah.
to do that. So yeah, I think every single details that you actually get or learn from your users or your market in that context, or the market as a whole, is always worthwhile to kind of step back and say, what does that mean to them using our products? Because there's a lot of times that you can see all these small snippets, I call them cultural snippets inside, that actually will help you to inform certain things that you can make a decision. And you don't actually have to have full launch on, new product. You can actually say, actually, we identify this having, let's say, for example, the example earlier, let's say having a weekly subscription or pay as you go is a potential way to kind of get into that market. So that is more appealing to them. Then you can look into how much effort internally that you need to build that features, or is that worthwhile to kind of put it in quietly and then kind of test it out. You can even do some painted door testing or A/B testing, that you kind of choose a small group of users and then put it out there and see whether they actually pay for it or actually drop off as well. So it's
Sure.
always there's a way to do that in a smaller size and then smaller ways as well.
This episode is brought to you by Pendo, the only all-in-one product experience platform.
Do you find yourself bouncing around multiple tools to uncover what's happening inside your product?
In one simple platform, Pendo makes it easy to both answer critical questions about how users engage with your product and take action.
First, Pendo is built around product analytics, enabling you to deeply understand user behavior so you can make strategic optimizations.
Next, Pendo lets you deploy in-app guides that lead users through the actions that matter most.
Then, Pendo integrates user feedback so you can capture and analyze how people feel and what people want.
And a new thing in Pendo, session replays, a very cool way to experience your users' actual experiences.
There's a good reason over 10,000 companies use it today.
Visit pendo.io/podcast to create your free Pendo account today and try it yourself.
Want to take your product-led know-how a step further? Check out Pendo and Mind the Product's lineup of free certification courses led by product experts and designed to help you grow and advance in your career.
Learn more today at pendo.io/podcast.
Pendo.
I'm curious, what's the secret to learning about a new market? Do you need to be there? Do you have to have boots on the ground? Do you need a local person as a guide? How do you approach that?
Yeah, so there are different ways. Again, it's different of depending on your budget as well, right? Like budget or timing and where you are with the market is where you are in the market. Like, do you have local teams or thing? So local team is always one way to learn from it. But at the same time, I'm always also cautious. Always mention to anyone I talk to, like cautious about what you get from your local teams, because a lot of them have smaller sales teams or marketing teams out there, not products or design or operation teams. Because even though they actually have insights that you have in the locally, they still sometimes still have inherent bias because it's their views on how they see their market, how they see their people as well. But it's always a good starting point for you to learn about the high level insights from a country. So you can start off with that. And then talking like I mentioned a few times about the data that you have, you might be able to look into that. Sometimes you do a bit of desk research and kind of look into what are actually out there. But be careful as well, because not everything on internet is accurate, as we know. So cross-check it. You can ask AI, and then but then you're still as a starting point, but you still have to dig deeper into that. So, but the best thing to do is, of course, is to talk to the local audiences. You could do that remotely to keep the cost down, because it's better to talk to them rather than you have no insights into that. If you have a bit of budget, it's always good to be on the ground, just to be out there to kind of experience it yourself, see how the world is going, how they functions as a community, as a society, and then you get to talk to them. It doesn't always have to be expensive, but there's a way to keep it down as well.
Have you actually asked AI? Have you made that part of your research now?
I actually interestingly like I because everyone is talking about, so I'm looking into it at the moment on because a lot of people use research to use the tool AI tool to say, oh, can we use that to as a users, that we don't have to interview users. We use AI to kind of create personas and everything, or we use AI to kind of analyze data or insights that we get from that. So what I'm doing now actually is I'm identifying in different layers. So one is like I'm identifying whether AI is good in, if you give them the insights from the users, that interviews that you have or data you have, are they good in coming back with the cultural elements, picking up the cultural elements for different countries? So that's one layer. I'm doing some tests and prompt tests and things like that. And then the other thing that I'm doing as well is on prompt tests on the capabilities of Western LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot and so on, versus some local and regional AIs like China, Baidu, they have that. And then you had JICE, GPT in Saudi Arabia and Arabic version. So I was doing some prompting and testing to see how much and compare their output to see how much they actually can provide, the detail of it, the accuracy of it, or actually they are very high level, they get very standard. Talk to the local teams and like outsource this, or actually think about the religions is very high level. So I'm doing that testing to see how much actually can use. But what I can see so far is LLMs actually can be valuable input as a starting point in terms of where you can use it, and then you kind of have to use that to validate further, either kind of validate with the research or validate with your internal teams or so on. But it's a good starting point, but it shouldn't be a final words. You shouldn't use that and say, oh, that they behave like this, and then just let's make a decision out of that. It might be in the future when there are more data and local data and more insight is actually being used to train the LLMs. In the future, they might be more precise. But at the moment, as I tested so far, it hasn't done yet. But I'm still doing that. I'm at the second stage of my testing at the moment. So I might publish a paper or something like that.
Nice. It's great to experiment with these things, isn't it? Um, you've been doing this for like 10 years or something now. So I'm really curious to know, you must have some great stories of what's worked and what hasn't worked. has anything in your time of kind of working on launching internationally, has anything really surprised you when you've been working on these projects?
Um, surprising. I think I have. Yeah, I think surprising sometimes it's kind of, oh, yeah, that's interesting. But I think because I'm always open minded about this, so I wasn't like, oh, something I never think about. Um, the interesting thing it was like Saudi Arabia was one of them. So I was just came back end of last year, like December. Uh, we we wanted to kind of understand. Actually, it's for audio streaming company. And we is actually they are very rich. You know, you have a lot of high net worth individuals in that country. Money is not an issue. They spend money on, you won't believe, like goals. And you ask them about the last thing they bought that they're considering whether I should buy or not. It was like gold jewelries. It's like the reason they were considering wasn't because of the price was, but was because of they already have something similar and things like that. So it's very different, but they actually not don't have a high willingness to pay for music. Um, so for example, or streaming services or certain thing. And you always think about why why is that? So we are trying to understand the reason behind that. It was interesting in that instance because we understand a few things about the culture because of the religion and so on. And what surprised us is that a lot of things they said, and you say, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then it kind of lead you to make certain conclusions. But then at the same time, there are other elements comes into actually contradicts to how they behave as well. And it's just like, oh, why is that? Again, there's other elements of the religions comes in. For example, they like to have the status about, like I have the status. It's very important in the social context as well. But the same thing, like it's the same time that they don't like bragging about it too much because there's a humbleness in their religions as well. Like you shouldn't do that. So there's a lot of contradicts from our point of view as a researcher. It feels like there's a contradictions on that. That makes it a bit harder to kind of see like what the it makes it a bit harder to kind of dig deeper. It's like why you're saying this thing, but actually again this is contradicts, and but it makes it even more interesting because then you will have to dig deeper into why they say certain things, and then but then they behave in a certain different ways, and there are certain things they can't tell you because they actually don't feel like that is the reason they behave that, and then you have to go and dig deeper into why they do certain ways. And because a lot of time people a lot of time like research will be saying like, oh, talk to the users, they will be able to tell you why they do certain things. But then when it comes to the cultural elements of that, sometimes it's not that they not willing to tell you why they behave in certain ways, but that is because they don't even know what trigger their behaviors as well.
Yeah.
So
It'd be really difficult to dig into as a researcher.
yeah, because like for example, we live in the UK for a long time, and then we do certain things in certain ways. Like people say, "Oh,
Yeah.
why do you behave certain ways?" It's like I don't know, but actually, there's a certain elements within the context of in the past or whatever that actually drive us to that element. But it's very important to understand the why behind their what triggering all these behaviors and so on, because that will be helping us and helping businesses and product people to kind of understand why they behave so you can make a decisions, not just presenting what they say they want, but actually you can go deeper into the things that they don't even know they need or they want. So that become very important.
Chui Chui, I think we probably have time for just one more question, and we have a lot more questions. So hopefully we'll be able to have you back to talk about some of the real practical elements of this. But there's something you mentioned earlier that I think is going to be really useful for people. You talked about one of the workshops that you do to get information out of people and steer them in the right direction or get them in the right headspace and to all work together. And there was one that I saw in your book called the 4 bucket exercise. Can you
Mhm.
talk to us a bit about that? I really loved it.
Yeah. So 4 bucket exercise, I should come up with a smarter name, but just like 4 bucket, it is what it is. It's
No,
4 bucket. So you have 4 buckets. So why do we do this? When do I normally do this workshop with clients? This is when we before we actually decide what to do, what we should do. Should we even do a research? If we're doing research or collecting data, what do we actually need to look into as well, because you need to be focused as well. And sometimes research might not be necessary even, because they already know a lot about the market. So normally what I do is I gather them together either remotely or kind of in person, and then say, okay, what we are going to put in a few things in this workshop. So we are going to have 4 buckets. The first bucket is called facts. So facts bucket. So it's everything is actually proven. You have something to actually back it up to say, we know this for sure. It's definitely the truth about the market or the people. So that is the first bucket. And then the second bucket, I call it strong hypothesis bucket. So it's something that you know quite well, but you still need a bit of insight to kind of turn them into facts, so that you actually very completely understand and can use that to drive your strategy already. And then the third bucket, I call it weak hypothesis. So these are more like subjective views of people that thinking, oh, it must do it that way. And I went to that country before and I see them behave this way, or assumptions or people or things that they heard from other people as well. But they will need a lot of things to kind of validate or invalidate them. And then the last bucket is called unknown bucket. So it's something that we don't really know a lot of questions. Like it could be as high level as we just don't know how Indonesians hire us, hire people. Like just very high level on that instance.
Okay, so you told us about the known facts, the strong hypothesis, the weak hypothesis, and the unknowns buckets.
Mhm.
What do you actually do with them? How do you actually run the exercise once you've got them up there? It seems self-explanatory, but I'm sure there's a little bit of nuance.
So there are a lot of reasons we run this workshop, right? Like so, first of all, is to kind of like um, collecting all the informations that all the stakeholders think they have, all the companies, all the informations or details that they have done in the past research and so on. So to put them together in one session, so that we have all information. And then the other reason as well is to actually make sure everyone is aligned on what we're going to kind of look into, what we know already, what we don't know, and challenge each other's assumptions and beliefs as well, so that we can actually have a clear view and a clear directions and aligned directions. So one thing I just want to mention as well is like whenever people actually put on this bucket, they always put it in facts. So you need to make sure that whatever they put in facts, they need to be backed up by something really like, because I have this reference, and otherwise everything will be in facts. And that was very dangerous, because everything in the facts bucket, it means that you can just use them to make decisions. You don't have to test it anymore. You don't have to do more research or cover it in your research questions and so on. So you need to make sure that everything in the facts is indeed facts. So having this session, so you will have all the information to know actually how much information you have in the strong hypothesis bucket and a weak hypothesis in unknown. And then with that, you need to find whether they are actually overlap. Is that how you actually go about finding out and validate and finding out the answers for all these questions as well? So it might be the case that actually we found out that we can do that via just launching and then collect new data in the future. So we can actually, within 3 months, we actually have all this information to validate what we have.
So what happens? Everyone says, as you said, they start putting their stuff in the facts bucket. You start challenging them. Do
Yeah.
they stay in?
No, no, that was one of the things I kind of find, I still find very interesting, is that I saw them put a lot in the facts bucket, and I said that now I'm going to go through each of them, each of the post-its, and say, whoever who put it, like let's discuss how you find the information, where do you find the reference, and how do you share that it's a fact. As I talking to in one of the sessions I was running with 15 people. And as I was talking, asking one person about one specific facts or post-it, I can slowly see a lot of post-it in that facts bucket slowly move to the strong hypothesis bucket or the weak hypothesis, because they don't have the information to back it up. So yeah, that is a very, very important exercise to do, because then you start challenging a lot of senior stakeholders who always believe they are right, to kind of rethink, actually, is that indeed that is the case.
I love this. I mean, this is just a great exercise, regardless of whether you're doing it for the purpose of international research or not. It just, I can see how this would work really well with strong personalities.
Yeah, I think it was a good thing. And then after that, you can use that to make decisions on what you want to do with the informations, right? But at least you actually have the view of everyone on the same page. Everyone knows what they are lacking and what they should look into as well.
Chui Chui, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us from beautiful Spain. Not your home, or your second home for today.
Yes, that is indeed. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it has been great to kind of discuss all this topic as well.
Thanks, Tweety.
No worries. Thank you so much.
The Product Experience hosts are me, Lily Smith, host by night and Chief Product Officer by day.
And me, Randy Silver, also host by night. And I spend my days working with product and leadership teams, helping their teams to do amazing work.
Luran Pratt is our producer, and Luke Smith is our editor.
And our theme music is from product community legend Arnie Kittler's band, POW. Thanks to them for letting us use their track.